All right, we'll start in the AFC North. Sully, I'm going to give you a team. You give me a question. Breach, you try to answer it first. How about that? Baltimore Ravens.
Yep, just very simple. It's been an offseason where their offensive line has really been shaken up. And so can whatever the maturations are hold up throughout the year? And if they can't, that probably spells disaster for this team that was the number 1 seed in the AFC.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about their offensive line kind of this whole offseason because they literally decided, hey, look, we're over it. We're going to completely revamp our offensive line. You look at their starters last year, Kevin Zeitler's no longer there. Morgan Moses is no longer there. John Simpson is no longer there. The whole room that was there in week 1, 2023 is gone. And now you have a completely revamped line. And that is such a risky move because, the Ravens have an offense really thrives. The rushing attack is what makes that work. And if you revamp your offensive line and all of a sudden your guys aren't as good at run blocking as they were last year, that's a problem. And now your offense is going to take multiple steps back. I mean, you have the reigning NFL MVP, and there's a very real chance the Ravens offense won't look as good this year as it did last year just because of all the moves they've made on the offensive line. So, man, this is a huge question. I agree with you here, Sully.
It is without a doubt the biggest question for the Ravens. The one thing that gives me a little bit of pause in questioning it or makes me sort of want to buy low on this Ravens offense is, well, I guess it's two things technically, but they bring in Derrick Henry, which signals, and John Harbaugh was asked about it on Rich Eisen's show, I think, and said, like they're like, what's the plan offensively, schematically? He's like, he's going to run for a bunch of yards like he did in Tennessee. That's the plan. We're going to give him the rock. So this isn't going to be they're going to try and be the same team that is run heavy, that, can devastate you, through the air when they need to. And they don't have this, like, by any stretch, elite group of wide receivers. But I mean, Zay Flowers had a great rookie year. They draft Tez Walker, who I think is a sneaky value in the 4th round. You have Mark Andrews. Isaiah Likely had a great season. So there's plenty of weapons in that direction. With the offensive line, I think it's definitely worth noting that all 5 or 6 guys, if you want to project Roger Rosengarten, their 2nd round pick this year, in over Daniel how do you pronounce Falil? I can never Falale, whatever, however. Yeah, all 6 of those guys. Great job by me. Ravens draft picks. Ronnie Stanley, the 2016 first rounder, no brainer. But then the other guys, Andrew Voorhees, a 7th round pick in 23, Tyler Linderbaum, a 1st round pick in 22, Ben Cleveland, a 3rd round pick in 21, Rosengarten, a 2024 2nd round pick, and then DF, a 4th round pick in 22. I just think that for a team that has long relied on their ability to draft and develop, I think it's very interesting that it's not like they were like, oh God, and went out and signed a bunch of guys. They sort of let guys walk knowing they had homegrown talent behind them. So I think there's a decent chance that the offensive lines that were like, oh, this is a surprisingly good unit, but maybe it takes till like the middle of the year for that to happen.
And I do wonder a little bit, you mentioned the skill position players and not really having a ton at wide receiver. You do have Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews at tight end. I wonder if that puts you more in 12 personnel more often than you're used to, which in turn you had basically at certain times have extra offensive linemen there just at the tight end spot.
Yeah, like Likely's, emergence last year maybe gives him a little more desire or freedom to run those 2 tight end sets. Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, this one is, some of these are more macro, some of these are, more specific. This one is kind of a big picture view of Deshaun Watson. He's only played 12 games throughout his tenure there with Cleveland. Can he elevate this team to a point where they are a legit contender in the AFC? Made the playoffs last year with Joe Flacco. Now that Watson's coming back healthy after the shoulder injury, can he be that quarterback that they signed to a $230 million fully guaranteed deal?
That's a great question. What's funny is that earlier today we heard their general manager, Andrew Berry, basically saying, hey, we have all the confidence in the world in Deshaun Watson, which I guess is what you have to say if you're the Browns general manager. You can't start thinking, yeah, we're already second guessing this and we're looking for our return receipt so we can call the Texans and see if we can get a refund on this. But it is, if I'm a Browns fan, I'm absolutely terrified at the thought that this entire season hinges on whether Deshaun Watson plays well. And look, he's been battling some health issues, but again, it's 2 straight years of health issues. And you look, the suspension, obviously, and then the health last year. And so, man, it is, he never had a game that really blew me away. They had that crazy comeback against the Ravens in November 2023, and he looked really good, and he was playing injured. But you look at any of these games, he didn't have any 300-yard games last season. He didn't have any game where he threw 3 touchdown passes. He didn't have a game where he just looked dominant like he did when he threw for almost 5,000 yards in his last season with the Texans. So it just, man, it is a scary thought from a Browns fan wondering what Deshaun Watson's going to look like this year.
Last year, Browns fans were look, the team made the playoffs, won a ton of games, was a huge surprise, but it wasn't because of Deshaun Watson. And I think that's got to be the concern is, now Bill Callahan, who's the offensive line coach, is gone. I really think that's a huge, like an underrated development. I would still make the number one question, Deshaun Watson. I don't know that you can confidently say Deshaun Watson's going to play well. He was given 6 games his first season because of the suspension and didn't play well. We had our buddy King Carmen on the show, and he suggested during the offseason that maybe they were sort of playing possum and that they had this they had a different offense ready to go. The Browns offense wasn't good with Deshaun Watson when he started this year, and then he got hurt. And there was, remember Brady Quinn, I think it was on his radio show, sort of got yelled at by various people in the media because he suggested, and I think I suggested on here as much, that it's like Deshaun's kind of taking his time coming back from this injury, and he ended up being knocked out for the year. He has that fully guaranteed deal, so he doesn't have to play games. It just feels like you had the year off, you missed the other half a year. I mean, how much transition and acclimation, which are the words that Andrew Berry used, are you allowed to have here? Because at some point you're just an old quarterback who's not very good anymore.
Exactly. And, I say, can Deshaun Watson elevate the Browns? I almost should ask, is this the make or break year for Deshaun Watson? Because if you come out of 2024 and it still hasn't come together, well, then you'd lead to assume that it's never going to come together. And this is going to be one of the biggest flops in recent memory in the NFL in terms of the amount that you had to trade for Deshaun Watson, the amount of money, the unprecedented contract that you gave him. It could turn into a monumental blunder for this organization that's had a lot of those throughout their history.
And the thing is, even if this is a make or break year, you look at his contract. Again, it is a fully guaranteed contract. According to Over the Cap, if the Browns were to cut Deshaun Watson after 2024, let's say they flop, they go 7-10, they don't make the playoffs, they've got 3 seasons under the belt, and they say, you know what, Deshaun's not the answer. They would have to take a $137 million cap hit. No one is taking a $137 million cap hit. Maybe they say, hey, let's do a post-June 1st cut after 2024. We'll spread the cut out. It's still a $110 million cap hit. Yeah. There's no way out of this contract until 2026 at the earliest, and even then you're taking a big hit. So it is.
Post-2026 would be $72.9 million pre-June 1, and post-June 1, 63.
So that's a substantial number. So you're essentially stuck with him for at least 2 more seasons, no matter how well he plays in 2024. So you have to, you're praying to the football gods that Watson can turn things around this year.
Yeah. And I mean, look, Kevin Stefanski did a great job with Joe Flacco and other quarterbacks when Deshaun Watson wasn't there. You find ways to win games. That's hard to do year over year in the NFL. So we will see. I would not be, I'm not optimistic. We talked about it last week. The Browns are the team we think could fall off a cliff. Pittsburgh Steelers.
Pretty easy one. Who's your week 1 starter? Is it Russell Wilson or is it Justin Fields? You sign Russell Wilson to low money. I think it's like he's not making much at all in terms of
$1.5 million, like $3.5 million.
Right. You assume that he was just going to be the guy after they move on from Kenny Pickett, and all of a sudden they pull off a trade for Justin Fields, and you're like, okay, what's going to happen here? So I think that's probably the most interesting quarterback training camp battle that we have right now. So that to me is, again, one of the easier questions.
$1.2 million.
Yeah, I mean, it's nothing.
It's crazy, but look, Mike Tomlin has never had a losing record for a reason. It's because this is a guy who's going to put the player who gives his team the best chance to win on the field. And I'm sure that Russell Wilson, Tomlin said it a bunch of times, that Russell Wilson's the guy right now, but we'll see what happens once this gets to training camp. He's going to start in the 1 spot as QB1. But if he goes out there and flops or just doesn't look good and Justin Fields looks like the better quarterback, I believe Tomlin that he has no issue starting Justin Fields. He doesn't owe Russell Wilson anything. The Steelers aren't, the contract's not big, as you guys just mentioned. So I think it's going to be an interesting competition because I don't know that Russell Wilson is much better than Justin Fields. Maybe he's better at running an NFL offense because he has more experience, but from who's more athletic, who gives the team more firepower, I don't know about the answer to that question. So this is going to be interesting to see what happens once training camp starts for the Steelers.
Yeah, I would say that I think that this may be a case where the Steelers approach it sort of like veteran quarterback and freshly drafted rookie situation, where if you don't, well, maybe I think if you're going to start Justin Fields in week 1, you're probably going to cut Russell Wilson because it's only $1.2 million dead cap hit. I don't know that you want Russ riding the bench in Pittsburgh. I think don't get me wrong. I think I agree with you, Breach. Like, I think Tomlin will go with the best guy, but I also think Tomlin's version of the best guy maybe in an Arthur Smith offense where you expect them to run the ball a ton, maybe the guy who just doesn't turn it over much. And I think it's a lot more likely to be Russell Wilson, who's not going to make that big mistake. Like, Tomlin believes in his defense. I think he believes they retooled the offensive line in a big way this offseason. I think he believes in that running game. And I expect Russ to win the job because he is less likely to cough the ball up. But I do agree completely that a field sees the field at some point in time and gives him the best chance to win.
And one of the things that I thought was interesting last week that might point to it being Russell Wilson that is ultimately the week 1 starter was that Jaylen Warren said that they were trying Justin Fields out on special teams as a kick returner in this new format. So if your QB1 is also returning kicks, that's not going to happen. You're not going to have Justin Fields be your starter on a week-to-week basis and also return kicks. Now, if he's on the bench, that makes a little bit more sense to try to utilize his talents. But I think that if that is to be believed and that's what they're looking into, then right now Russell Wilson has the inside track.
Yeah, and to be clear, I absolutely do think Russell Wilson's going to be the week 1 starter. I'm just going along with Sully's question here and more of what happens with the Steelers' decision-making if Justin Fields looks a lot better in training camp. But yeah, I mean, this Steelers team is designed like Wilson's early Seattle teams, 2012 through 2015, where you have a great defense, you have a good rushing attack, and you have enough weapons outside where Russell Wilson will be able to make some plays. And I think that's what Tomlin's saying. He's thinking, all right, we're putting Wilson in the perfect situation for him to succeed. So let's give him the keys to the car and see what he can do.
Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, I'll lay this up to you, Breach. What happens with T. Higgins and Trey Hendrickson? Both of them requested a trade.
Yeah, I added Burrow's health, I think, is the biggest issue right now because I don't think.
Wait, you added a second big question to Sully's big question?
Well, I think this big question has.
The Bengals just tweeted Joe Burrow's out on the field like at the beginning of this podcast. I don't know if you saw that or not.
We're recording this again on Monday, and Burrow's first day out there post injury is Monday. But it's not the session's not open to the media, so we don't know how much throwing he'll do. We don't know where he is as far as rehabbing. But with T. Higgins and Trey Hendrickson, I 100%, we'll say 99.9% expect both of them to be playing for the Bengals in 2024, to be on the field in week 1. I highly doubt they get traded. The Bengals will just hang them out there to dry. They're not going to rush unless somebody comes out there and offers 2 first-round picks or something absurd. I don't think Higgins or Hendrickson will be moved. Now, if we talk about this next offseason in 2024, now there's a situation where maybe Higgins is gone and the Hendrickson situation has gotten a little crazier because maybe he goes 17 sacks or something again after his huge 2023 season. But I think right now both those guys are back and definitely playing for the Bengals in 2024. And with Burrow's health, it's how well can he throw a ball and is his wrist going to hold up? Because you have never really had a quarterback be forced to come back from an injury like this. And so Burrow's kind of breaking new ground with this. You don't know what to expect.
Yeah, I think Burrow's health is a question for later in the offseason. If he's not, if we don't see it, like we get closer to preseason, it's like, all right, this starts to become a question. Wouldn't bet any Bengals overs until I know about Joe Burrow and get closer to the year. I think the thing with T. Higgins and Trey Hendrickson basically boils down to this: the Bengals operate the way the Bengals operate, and when it comes to guys on franchise tags or guys who want new contracts, you're probably not going to get one, and they're going to let you play the year out and then walk or figure, like they're just not going to be held hostage by guys who are demanding trades or demanding new contracts, and we've just seen this pattern from Cincinnati over the years.
Well, and I'll add one more thing to that is that we obviously saw the T. Higgins situation kind of happen with Jesse Bates, where he didn't show up until August, skipped most of training camp, but eventually he showed up, played on the tag, left. And if that happens with Higgins, that might end up being what happening. The thing with Hendrickson, though, is that he literally just signed an extension. They gave him a raise last year. So if I'm Trey Hendrickson, this is my agent's fault. You should have asked, somebody should have asked for more money there. You can't go back a year later and demand a trade after you just got an extension that gave you more money. They gave you more money, man. Sorry, you didn't ask for more, but they said,
you agreed to the amount of money that you're getting. Like Higgins got tagged. I understand getting franchise tagged and being upset about it because they won't give you a new deal. But when you got a new deal and then you're like, wait, I want another new deal. It doesn't work like that.
Exactly.